So, hi Jürgen. I think you are one of the few guests where I can pronounce your first name hopefully correctly.
Yes, you are doing it correctly.
Very good. So, but now back to the series of today. So, what was your first computer?
My first computer was a C64.
Oh, wow! So, pretty advanced one. What did you do with it? You start gaming or programming?
Yeah, I had been like 7 years old, so it was like playing
right?
all the old games and having a little bit of how was it called? Logo, the word, the word processor they had back in the day.
Not word processor. The logo was the turtle, right?
The logo was not sure. There was this where we had a mouse and everything, and you could write some small text. And my father was into this kind of stuff. But yeah, for me at the time, it was like playing games on floppy disks, and these things.
So you kept gaming, or you did something sensible, something different with C64?
No, I've never gotten over the stage of gaming. So as I came of the age to really do something with computers, was much later. So it had been at the time of PCs and desktop computers.
Okay. Yeah. So you got the C64. What was your next machine?
286 or something like this.
Okay.
And later, then the next thing then came to a 486, then a Pentium 100 or 200, something like this, and moved from DOS to Windows.
And what was your first machine you started programming? So what was it, the 486?
No, my first machine I really started programming was around as I had been around 18 years old. Was a little bit of PHP, not PHP Basic. At the time, and it was that was at Pentium times.
Okay, and why you started? So why you didn't just kept playing or gaming?
Good question. How did I start? So I always was interested in how the computers worked. So I started building my own computer. So I gotten into the thing part where I started to how is it working? What I'm doing there, and basically my brother had been a little bit into it before me. He's a couple of years older, and he introduced me to programming. And I have to admit, I started really programming for real as I started studying.
Yeah, but why? I mean, with the PHP, okay, so there was nothing, you did something, but without, how to call it, the right mood. And then you started studying, right? Computer science.
Yes, and this was like, I always felt I wanted to do something with computers at the time. I already had a feeling for how things worked, and this was the reason how why I then started. I want to do something with really write programs and software, and but I had no clue what I'm doing, what I've been doing at the time. So it came much later.
And which programming language you started with?
Actually, I really the first programming language I used for real until today is Java. So I really started with Java, doing good and real stuff, and stick to it.
Okay, and which version was it? You remember?
The Java 1.5, I believe. Oh no, 1.5 at the time.
This is almost impossible because you started with C64, then you had PC, and then you started studying. Java 5 was really, this was like 2005 maybe?
Yeah, I started 2003.
Okay, that's possible because 2003 there was Java 5, Java 6. This is very possible.
Yeah.
So you're a junior, so you're a young man.
Yeah, relatively, yes.
Yeah, well, okay, so very good. But you are over 18, so we can freely talk about programming now, right? So there's no restriction.
Definitely.
Yeah, very good. But with Java 5, this is a little bit cheating because you already had annotations and all the modern stuff was already available.
Yeah, that's true.
Very good.
But at the time, I didn't really know about annotations. Came much later that I realized what annotations can do for me.
And what was your reaction to Java? You liked it immediately, or was it like strange feeling, or remember that?
Question. Haven't really thought about it till now. So I kind of felt at home right from the start, I believe. So I had the whole concept of object-oriented programming had been clear to me from the start, and yeah. So and the good thing was as I started studying, while studying, we always had a practical part where we had been working in companies. So it really helped that I always had real life projects to learn with. So it was always clear to me why I do things the way I need to do them.
Okay.
Because I never really programmed in my own flat only for my own enjoyment. So I always had people around me that helped me along and showed me the way how to do things, which I'm really glad about.
And where you where you studied, in which city?
Jena.
Ah, okay, and it was nice. University?
Yeah, I'm still living in Jena, so I love the city.
Yeah,
and also the environment we have here, especially regarding the software engineering part.
Yeah, exactly. There's a very famous entrepreneur guy. I forgot the guy who started the company. It was not Jena, was it?
Which do you mean?
There were Jena Glass, right? This was the very famous company.
Yes, yeah. We have two big parts here in Jena. The one is it's also called Optical Valley a bit because we have Carl Zeiss and Jena Glass and Schott and so on. And also then the software part came with the e-commerce bubble
Intershop,
around this time.
Right? The
Intershop, yes. And out of Intershop came lots of other companies around e-business and
what was the guy behind Intershop? He was like,
the guy behind Intershop.
He was in the TV all the time. He was like, the poster child of German e-commerce, new economy.
Well, Stefan Schambach is his name.
Exactly.
He studied, I believe, pharmaceuticals or something like this. So nothing really software related. Not quite sure how he came to doing what he was. I believe he was like also had been affinitive to computers and started a company where they sold computers at first, and at a certain point they started developing the first web shop with Perl at the time.
Exactly.
And it started off at a certain point, and Intershop is still around.
Yeah.
So
because Stefan Schambach, exactly, and I had a chat on the AirX FM with someone, and I forgot the name of the Intershop. It was actually the about deep nets, and he also started an e-commerce in Slovenia, I think, e-commerce company. And say, okay, we had the German a counterpart, but I forgot the name, and this is actually Intershop, exactly. And what I did, we created a Java competitor for Intershop. This was funny because the Intershop was Perl based or PHP based, and back then it was. Yeah, and back then, Java was everything had to start with J, and Java was the thing. So we created a small e-commerce solution based on Java. So therefore, and I actually, exactly. I meant the Jena Glass and Intershop. They were both very famous companies are very famous companies from Jena, and Intershop should be still around. So I've looked it up.
Intershop still is. We now have a couple of agencies or agenturen, not quite sure what the best. Agencies that are working with or providing e-commerce services that are actually larger than Intershop itself nowadays.
Okay. So so you started with Java. What was your first application? A little bit more interesting, or
the first application I totally wrote for the trash and by myself for my company at the time was a timesheet tool. This was where I made all of the mistakes you can do as a starter.
Very good.
So having constructors with thousands of lines of code and things like this, because I had no idea what I was doing at the time. And the next thing was then the company I worked afterwards for, they was from old Intershop guys that founded their own company. They had an eBay connector at the time, so you could automatically sell your products from your shop over eBay. So with all the management and the communication.
Oh wow, for Intershop, so interesting. And you did it?
Yeah, it was not for Intershop. It was working with nearly every shop system.
Okay, and you wrote it in Java.
Yeah, they wrote it in Java. It was Tomcat based, where we used JDO at the time, and JSPs, and well.
But JDO is already interesting because it was not that common. So it was more like, specialist tool, JDO, Java data objects, right?
Yeah. So, and what was quite interesting because the next companies I worked for, then somebody came around, yeah, here's JPA, and this is totally cool, and so on. And I'm like, yeah, it's the same like JDO.
Yeah, because JDO had more state to manage, what I remember. No, JPA was like, it is attached or detached, and in JDO there are multiple states you could have an object. It was like...
It's quite a long time ago. I don't really remember the details.
Yeah. But you remember, was it Codo? Properly you use Codo, right? Implementation.
No, TJDO, I believe it was
TJDO,
called.
okay. Mm-hmm. Okay,
if
nice.
I'm not mistaken.
So this was the second project. So this was already enterprise. Was it during your university time or afterwards?
Yes, this was during my university time. Then I switched to another company where we built mobile apps. We had at the time the first app store before app stores ever existed on all J2ME devices.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a little bit of front end, mobile development there. Realized relatively quickly that I'm not the front end guy; I'm more the back end guy. So I switched to the back end part
because everything was pink, or what?
No, it's just like put in a pixel here, a pixel there.
Okay.
At a certain point, I told my my boss at the time, so if I have to build another web page, I will change the company. Then he never gave me another UI assignment. This was the time where I really gotten into the backend part. They had an own web shop with not Spring. How is it called? This struts at the time. We had Tomcat backend for our apps and for the app store. Then we had another backend. Then later on for within JE server the Apache. No, not JBoss. GlassFish source Apache. How was it called?
Tommy.
No, not Tommy. The precursor to Tommy.
Geronimo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Been using at the time.
Oh, this is strange because Geronimo was really rare. So almost no one used Geronimo. So you always used exotic projects like JDO, Geronimo.
I was always somebody else started the whole thing, and I jumped into the projects much later. So
I wanted to use Geronimo, but it was always hard to handle. The problem was with the modules, installation was everything was way too complicated and too strange. So I actually, because in one point of time, Geronimo was supported by IBM, so it could be an interesting option, but I never had the chance to, or I didn't want to use it actually, and I never recommended Geronimo to somebody.
Not sure why my colleague decided to use this one. I can't really remember.
Okay.
So it was,
but it worked.
Did its job nicely and greatly. So I hadn't really have a comparison to like JBoss or other servers. So later on, we worked then on, in the JE times, I worked for a private project with GlassFish.
Nice.
For another customer, we then use JBoss. So yeah. The concepts has always been similar.
Yeah.
Because I never really had.
And you still studied, so, or was it afterwards? So you during your study you did all the Java E work,
as I finished with my studying, I was working with the Tomcat and the Geronimo part, and afterwards then came I had a WebSphere project in between as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
The WebSphere Classic was slow. This was a huge server.
Yeah, it was in this case. It was embedded in WebSphere Commerce.
Okay. No experience with that. So I only have the experience with the big one, and this was slow. Okay. So after your study, you started to work as a consultant for companies, or?
At a certain point, I decided I might be able to do things better. I was a little bit blue-eyed as I started my own company and had a few product ideas at first, but realized I'm not really product development guy, in the sense of the business development for a product. So at some point I had to earn money. So I went into consulting. This was the WebSphere Commerce project I've ended up in. This was my first real project. around this. Then, and over time, I started acquiring my first employee and my first projects. And so the focus switched from the normal consulting to doing in-house projects or supporting our customers in a more embedded manner, so to speak.
So the first company was just extended to be a consulting company, or you shut down the first company and started a new one?
Yeah, I've always kept the company as a construct.
Okay, proxy.
Yeah, as a proxy. So my company is named Data in Motion, and we are around since 2010.
Oh, you have to still the company, Data in Motion. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So now with a couple more employees, and
I didn't know that. So how much employees do you have?
Currently, we are 6 people. Okay. So we are quite specialized. We already realized that at some point we do more have a technical focus and not that much on the business side. So we have customers from traffic information systems, medical, public entities. One of our current customers is building mass spectrometers.
Okay.
So we have a relatively broad range of we do from the business side, because technically it's usually the same what you're doing there. The problems they have are similar.
So what I understood, you started your company Data in Motion to try to create a product, but you failed. Then you started to creating a consulting company with the same name, Data in Motion, and then you stick until now. Okay.
Yeah, that's basically the rough
the rough thing. Okay. So, and what was your first project with Data in Motion? Was it like e-commerce, or what was it?
No, the first in-house project, so to speak, where we didn't do real consulting, was we built an extension for, how was it called? A statistics tool for the Bundesamt für Risikobewertung.
Aha.
Where they...
This is German, this would be like the Bundesamt would be like the agency for risk management or risk estimation, right?
Risk assessment.
Assessment. Mm-hmm.
Translation, and they used an open source statistic tool to build to model how food processes worked and how bacteria would develop inside this. So like you take a piece of meat, take it out of the freezer, and the freezer had been at 6 degrees, then you have it laying on your table for like 10 minutes, and then you took it to your frying pan, so on and so forth, and they had statistical models how things would develop there. And it was the time at EHEC, so this and then in the end they can say, okay, if something could survive the process, for example.
Okay. So, that's actually already interesting. What interests me before we start, to discussing your projects, you had some products of ideas, but they failed. What do you wanted to build actually?
Then my product, the one product idea I really invested time into was called smartcove. The idea had been to have something like these comparison sites you have for products, for online products, but for offline products. Mm-hmm. Meaning, if you decide, hey, I need a new camera or something like this, you roughly know what you want, and you could search for it and see, hey, you can get MediaMarkt, Walmart, mm-hmm. or whatever. This is the price, it is available, and so on and so forth. So that you had a central point where you can say, where can I get what I need right now? So, or where can I buy it in a store?
Yeah, but there are already a couple of websites right now which are doing this, right?
Yeah, but this was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, but why it wasn't successful? I mean, because
the whole thing was, from the technical perspective, it's not that hard something like this, but the biggest problem at the time at procuring the data. So where are things available? Most companies kind of had this data, but there hadn't been any APIs. Then you needed to really invest in people running around trying to acquire companies like MediaMarkt and so on to give you the data. And most of the potential investors said it's too much effort. And I guess in the US, the thing could have run easier because people tend to, hey, that's a good idea. Google, like, here you have my money, just do something with it. In Germany, where people are much more skeptical towards.
But you could have a site scraper or HTML scraper, which understands the structure and scrape the data. This is what you could do back then, right?
Yeah, this would have been a possibility. So like I said, I went in alone at the time and didn't find anybody who gave me enough money for it to really get started. I had a prototype which showed the whole thing. Had been talking to a few companies at the time if they would be interested as a local companies to give me their information, and but this is where it got stuck. So I still believe in the idea, but I never gotten around to follow up on it.
But all the approaches right now, they are scraping the websites actually. So what they are doing, they are trying to get the public information and combine it. This is what I know. I think the companies would never expose the data directly to you. I would say it is harder.
Yeah, this might be a point. So this is also what most of the builders had been afraid of, that this would not be the case. So.
Yeah. So good, but your first project sounds even more interesting. What you did with the middle and with the data. So there was almost data analysis. So it was almost a little bit AI, almost, right? What you did. I mean, you could actually use AI right now to.
Yeah, the AI. Yeah, but AI is a little a bit of higher statistics.
So, yeah. But I mean, if you would, you could have, if you have statistical data, you can just try to predict whether the meal is infected or not, right?
Yeah, but at the time we didn't build the models for it. We just gave them the tooling to implement their models. Mm-hmm. So this was it was a little bit like a graphical MATLAB, so to speak. So they could pull put together pipelines of data processors and their parameters into it. We had another company that took care of the statistical side of the things, and we only put it into the technical things for the client.
Okay.
That's been behind this tool.
Okay. So and from there you stick with projects like that where you analyze data and try to.
No. Like I said, we had a broad range. So the next three project we did was for the university hospital in Jena, where we supported them with it was called like video supported therapy, meaning in the when you go to the head doctor, how is it called? I'm missing the word here. The psychologist, if you're sitting with a psychologist and in the clinic, the psychologists are listening to you and making notes. And when they want to share information or want to ask other colleagues for what they think about something, they only could talk about what they had in their notes. And the idea had been when you have a therapy session, there is a surveillance camera, and they could start it with an app and say, hey, okay, now I record the session, and then they could mark certain events like, hey, child is crying, and things like this, and then they could show it to their colleagues later on for their documentation purposes. So this was the next thing we did, built for a customer. Afterwards, we had a project where we created a logistics platform.
But this is interesting. So if the video was recorded, you have to add the time points. There was some metadata involved, so it was interesting, right?
Exactly. So we parsed the video stream, or we took the video stream from this surveillance cameras, which had been a little bit special, and then put our markers next to it, so we could jump to the points in time. We did an RCP application with it, where you could have your patient data in, and so. And then you could had your file or a patient file where you saw all the sessions and could jump through it.
And you did it with Java, so you parsed the video information.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did it. I tried to use the common libraries for it, but at a certain point I realized I couldn't really get them to work correctly. So I parsed the video stream itself to find when somebody stops a stream to really stop at the last frame and not in the middle of the next frame from the streaming side of things. And we used VLC, an embedded VLC player to show the videos. And all this had been embedded in an Eclipse RCP application.
And was it hard to parse the video stream with Java?
Not really. So I didn't really look at the video itself. I only looked at the key points where they said, okay, here's a frame starting, a keyframe is starting, a keyframe is ending.
Okay.
So this was what I was looking at the time. So
nice. When was it roughly? Which year?
This had been like 2011, 2012, something
Okay,
around.
so it was almost modern
Uh,
times. So I would say.
yeah, definitely.
With Eclipse RCP.
So,
So okay, and okay, so this is what you mean by in-house project. So yeah, I always told I'm also consulting, but sometimes I do also in-house projects. So now I know it. So I'm
yeah,
consulting, doing some projects
yeah,
in-house and get to my clients. This is actually okay.
yeah. So and nowadays we have a mixed bag of services. So we do this like in-house projects, as we call it, and also we do consulting with customers where we get around and not really building projects for them. We more support them in their um, to to help them along in their development processes. So what
Yeah.
should they need to change? What needs to be refactored in order to get rid of all the technical debt? Help them streamlining their development process itself, supporting them with additional tooling or modifying tooling, especially around Eclipse, if they need things there.
Okay.
So this is another branch we are having.
Yeah, and you told me if you find OSGi, you always tell your clients to remove it, so it's going easier, right? This was the idea.
Yes, yeah, definitely, definitely. No,
No.
with the first project where we had to use Eclipse RCP, I kind of fell in love with OSGi over the time. I hated the tooling, but I loved the concept behind it. And we reached a certain point where we built these. This was the project for the university clinic, where we had our front end part in RCP because this was at the time the only solution we saw feasible with a real rich client. And then we something okay, now we need a backend to communicate with. So and then at a certain point we realized it would be great if we could reuse code we use in the front end also in the backend. So we have our bundle. So and most of the enterprise servers at the time had been OSGi underneath, and we were like, okay, why do we have to deploy now an EIAR or a WAR? Why can't we just deploy our bundles? Because nobody exposed their OSGi framework to the outside world. And we stumbled upon a project called Gyrex. It was a full OSGi server at the time. Where we could just throw in the bundles we already had, right? Our additional bundles, and then, we had been happy with what we got there. Interestingly, it turned out the project had also been developed in Jena. But it was a full Eclipse runtime project at the time, and this is when we started using OSGi also in the back end.
But GlassFish also supported OSGi at the backend, right?
Yeah, it was there was at the time an unofficial API we learned about much later.
Okay.
But all the public information that we stumbled around upon had been like, no, you can't. So also there was no real tutorial how to do things like this, or the resources that told us what we would have could been doing. So
okay, then I understood. This makes sense if you have because Eclipse RCP requires you to write bundles, and if you already have the bundles, you can run them on the server. Just it's a very efficient way to reuse your code, and then you try to find a server. What was the name of the server?
Gyrex.
Gyrex, and so you could run your front end bundles as. I suppose were just libraries, like share algorithms or validations,
like the
logic parts in the backend, which is great. I mean, this is what also we try to attempt to use with JavaScript for validation. We also run parts of the JavaScript in the backend.
And the other thing we had been doing or still doing till today is we are using the Eclipse modeling framework. Not sure
EMF.
Yes, EMF. So we model all our entities with EMF. We have a persistence layer to write it into MongoDB. We can use it on the API side. So we could use the same objects everywhere in the front end, in the back end. And this was the other part.
I actually used EMF with GMF. This was the diagram.
Yes.
Diagram part. And then used, I think, Open Architecture to generate code from EMF, because EMF was the meta model. And you can generate from the EMF Java classes, which you can use as an input for code generation. So I actually spent some time with EMF, GMF, and data generation with Eclipse. And it worked well. It was not OSGi involved at all. It was just,
you can use EMF itself. Also when you use the standard EMF code generator, it will create an Eclipse plugin out with it if you want. Also you can deactivate it naturally. But it did not require really OSGi. And what it was doing, besides putting in some metadata in the manifest, has been OSGi itself. So it has been the extension model of Eclipse, yes, but this is not really OSGi. That's the thing.
Okay, so you're still using this. This is interesting because what I see is that Eclipse gets a little bit less popular right now than it was a few years ago. So that's my observation. Or it gets more popular because it works behind the scenes for Visual Studio Code. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, so Eclipse is running behind the scenes actually.
Yeah, also I have to admit, I never really gave what kind of IDE I'm using. So I started out with IntelliJ and later switched to Eclipse because the EMF part is the tooling is all Eclipse based. I've tried to use Visual Studio Code as well, but I know Eclipse, I know what to do there, so I stick to Eclipse. And if I have another project where I need to use something else, then I use something else.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand this emotional way people defend their IDE, because each IDE, if it's NetBeans, if it's IntelliJ, has its pros and cons, and I use the tool which is appropriate for what I need to do.
But there's no more such a thing, I think, like defending. So for me, it's like, if I'm a consultant, I have to work together with someone. And the only thing is, if I cannot introduce commercial IDEs easily to companies which don't have them, right? This is the problem, because if you have IntelliJ and they are not using IntelliJ, they won't buy IntelliJ just because you have it as a consultant. So you have to use.
But we really had with customers that where we told them how we would build the whole things and what the advantages of all these things is with the model-driven development and so on and so forth. And people had been rejecting the thing because they couldn't do it with IntelliJ at the time.
Oh.
So they were like, no, we will not do this even if the process is much better, but we want to write our models with IntelliJ or PlantUML or whatever. So if we can't do it with this, then we won't do it, basically. So...
Yeah, but IntelliJ. Yeah, but with Eclipse, you will just get the editor. It has nothing to do with the development, right? So
I didn't understand it either. Why people had been so hesitant to use a certain tool chain, because they couldn't use their favorite IDE with it. So
okay. Interesting. So yeah, but your OSGi use is more like you had to use OSGi because you used Eclipse, right? It's not like you are an OSGi fanboy because of the sake of OSGi. You were forced to use OSGi because you got Eclipse, and there were some. Okay, if you have Eclipse and OSGi.
No, I have to reformulate what I said. I started out using OSGi in the context of Eclipse, but I'm a fanboy today.
Okay.
So because we basically use OSGi nearly everywhere where it's possible.
Okay.
So server side, product side.
Now it's interesting.
Whatever project we do.
Because I tell you my story of OSGi. Because you pinged me at meetup.com.airhacks, right? You wrote me a message and you said like I'm negative about OSGi. So why you are thinking this? Where I said this? You remember this?
No. I had the feeling. I heard the podcast, your last podcast on modularization with somebody I also couldn't pronounce the name.
From Payara.
Yes, the guy from Payara. And you talked about modules and how modules are necessary and useful and where it's useful and so on. And it was always, OSGi is an implementation of modules, but it's too complicated was what I've gotten out of it.
Yeah, then I can refine that. What happened to me is maybe at the same time where you are active with OSGi, Eclipse RCP was very popular. So we were forced to use Eclipse RCP without a reason. And before Eclipse RCP, we used Swing, which was fine. So, but in the Swing there were no modules because we didn't needed them. So there were no modules because there was no requirement. It's not like in your case where you are seeing then something is replaceable. In our case, it was a few use cases. There was not a product, a simple project. We delivered that and it's done. So I suspect in most iOS apps or Android apps, there are also no modules. It's just one application, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
So, and then Eclipse came, and then, you know, I was often the external architect, and there were internal architects, and they wanted to have modules for the sake of having modules. So they asked me, you know, why my code is so monolithic. So yeah, because I cannot imagine, you know, what is the idea of if there is no, or how to call it, there is no concept, no visible concept in a business of a module. For me, I cannot imagine of anything which can be swapped or replaced in the project. I cannot just build modules to have fun with modules, right? And in one project, they just insisted on a module. Then I told them, then give me a number, and I will create, you know, the amount of modules you like, and we will spend, you know, 1 day for your module, and this is what we will bill you, you know, 10 days more for 10 modules. And in other project with Eclipse RCP, we got a problem. We created everything with modules, and then the business department find out that Eclipse is modular, and actually the users are now able to load plugins and deactivate plugins. And I remember it was Eclipse 3.0, but back then it was impossible to deactivate the plugin system in Eclipse. So we had to know to hack it around to deactivate the plugin system at runtime, so that the end users are not allowed, you know, to play with the modules. And for me, it was OSGi is a great if you have a problem. In my business projects, there was not always a concept of a module, so it was not helpful. And with the OSGi, everything became more complicated without any added value to the business. This is the thing. But the same story today, I had a discussion with JPMS, Java Module System, and I have to admit it's the same story. So I like JPMS a little bit more, but in my microservice projects, there are no modules. So we have just, you know, one code base and we ship everything, and I don't see the point of having a module. And yeah.
Okay. The two parts to this. So the one thing that is the basic concept of modularity. So what do you need it for, or what's the use behind it?
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion, it's a matter of what kind of how are you used to doing things. So modularity itself is relatively hard. So from the concept side, because you have to think in boundaries, and you have to think, okay, what does my module need? What does it provide, and so on and so forth. But one can do it, but it's not really necessary. So if you don't really have a use case where you say I need a plugin model or something like this, so then you can say I just will not do it with it. What I've realized over, especially in long-term projects, if you have a modular system, you define boundaries for certain functionalities. So, and you can have, like, this is what they currently nowadays want to do with microservices, and you have a team that takes care of a certain functionality. So, but you always have the same thing also in smaller teams. So you always have your experts for certain areas, and regardless of what you're doing, when you use object-oriented programming with packages in Java, you will always create implicit models, modules by just, okay, you define it via a package or something like this. So you basically already are doing it, but just not putting it in own jars.
Exactly.
So the concept of putting it all in different jars is one can do it, one does not really necessarily need to do it. But what I've realized, especially in projects that are really running over a long time, if you don't have this concept and nobody to enforce this concept of, hey, stick inside of certain boundaries, projects will become messy, and the technical debt will pile up, and so on and so forth. And if you have a good modular system and some way of enforcing certain things inside this framework, the code can, not will, it's no guarantee, but it will make life easier in the long run. So, because people usually, I've seen the tendency for most developers, just get the job done. So, regardless of what it takes. And the result of this is that, a prototype never stays a prototype, and things become more complicated over time. And in the end, you get a real mess of code, which is hard to decouple, to refactor and things like this.
We did another episode, AXFM, with Professor Matthias Juric, and he's about modularization. And what I focus more is on the logical modules. So for me, the packages are very important. So the package naming, class naming, and stuff like that. And the physical modularization, I don't like it because it comes with additional overhead. And I would like to see an business evidence on something more, to it, to say, okay, now it's crystal clear why we need such a module. And OSGi is an idea, or microservice is another one. So we could have both, right? So, or whatever. So it is always the idea that we need now a physical separation so that the boundary is even stricter. Because my logical packaging only works in smaller projects. And if you have motivated developers, which always keep their code base clean, right?
Yeah. Like I said, and then like you said yourself, so you are already modularizing. Yeah. So the physical separation is something, the modern microservice approach, where if we put everything in a Docker file, this is something I totally hate, basically. Yeah. Because people just tend to, they want the advantage of modularization, but they don't really want to think about the implications that brings with it.
Exactly.
So you have network latency, you have bloated images, where everybody builds smaller monoliths and throws everything in there. And then it's just like, hey, I have 25 gigabyte large microservices or something like this in the extreme. This is something I don't really like. So clustering things in smaller jars, however, is something I do every day. And this is something which, from my perspective, helps people seeing what they are doing there, especially when you have OSGi. The big advantage is with the right tooling, it always tells you and shows you what you are, besides your business logic, what else you require.
Yeah.
Meaning I have heaps of projects where the result we compile in the end will pull in so many transitive dependencies because nobody really cared about all these things, that you think like, why do I need 5 or a gigabyte of something or a couple of 100 megabytes of something where I actually only need like 10 megabytes of jars in the end to run the whole thing.
And how you version the stuff? So do you have every plugin comes with an own version, or you release everything?
Depends. Also it depends. We have some projects where, if we have something like a product, project, then we have simultaneous versions. For framework things, we version things individually, sometimes down to the package level. So,
plugin level, right? Or package?
No, package level. You can even version your packages inside your differently versioned plugins in OSGi if you want to. You don't have to for the whole thing. But this is more like when you're building framework parts, then this makes sense.
I didn't saw OSGi for a long time, but what I perform a lots of code reviews and what I see a Maven module, which are a little similar. And if I already see, microservices, as you said, hundreds of Maven modules, and everything comes with the same version. I ask them, why you're doing this? I mean, just in the sake of having, microservices, or what's the entire point? And sometimes there's no explanation. So people are doing just microservices because they are modern. They are thinking, okay, if I'm shipping, 100 microservices, everything is getting better, but it's getting worse. So my point is actually, if you would build a monolithic system, let's say monolithic means one Maven module, you put everything to one project, and then you see all the packages in Java. So you are forced to think more about the structure because you see everything in one project. But if you have 100 microservices, you have 100 projects, and as you said, the mess spreads around, and no one actually knows what's going on. So I think our thinking is similar, but my projects are more backend projects, right? So I'm not using Eclipse RCP, so my microservices is smaller, so I can survive longer with my strategy because if the logical module becomes too big, what usually happens, it usually means it's responsible for too much, and there is a good use case or business reason to split it into two. such monoliths. But in my projects, so I would say we have at most 10 modules, microservices. And this is already a large project. If you think, if you have a still running microprofile in Java EE, so such a microservice, we have maybe 10 to 20, 30 tables. If you have 10 such microservices, it's already 300 tables, which is our mid-range project. So I would say it is not small, but it works well. So I was just curious about your take, because it seems to me we are thinking about similar things, but your tooling is different because your projects run inside Eclipse RCP.
No, this is another misconception. I started working with Eclipse RCP.
Okay.
Nowadays, we have pure OSGi servers.
Okay.
So
which
don't
one?
utilize it. Also, this is the other thing. We got a little bit of sidetracked around the whole module discussion. In OSGi, we have just as a little bit of background, I have been, or we as a company have been member of the OSGi Alliance at a certain point,
Okay.
writing the specs and things like this. Nowadays, we are, OSGi Alliance had gotten dissolved, and we are have moved as into a working group inside Eclipse.
Okay.
And I'm the current chair of the OSGi steering committee.
Oh, and you are a nice chair. I didn't know about that, because there was another chair, and it was
Ben Denbera.
No. Before there was one guy. If I said something on Twitter, I don't need your modules, he was really angry. I always got fire from OSGi community because I was so.
There's always when you're especially on Twitter, if something comes around, only modularity is mentioned. There are two or three guys I also see, and they always jump in. You should do that's that David Moore, no, somewhere Moore. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Okay, so I met a nice OSGi guy. This is good to know already.
But what I wanted to get to is
So you are the chair of OSGi at Eclipse.
Of the OSGi steering committee. So we have the steering committee which steers basically the working group, and we have the different projects underneath it, especially the specification project, where we then write the specifications in the Eclipse specification process manner.
Okay. Yeah, very good. So and then you told me now you are running something on the server, right?
Yes. So this is let me get back to what I wanted to lead with. Actually, OSGi has a marketing problem for years. So because, as we already said, for modularity there are different approaches, and if you want to do modularity right, you have to think about a lot of things like versions. Do you want dynamics? Don't you? Or do you not want dynamics in your life? If you have a module, how to define your metadata, speaking of what do I provide, what do I require, how to resolve all these issues at runtime, at development, and so on and so forth. Most of these issues are somehow some things every developer has to live with in some way or another, if he wants to use modularity or not. So if you have a Maven dependency, you always have to think, what are the transitive dependencies? Are you still on, or are we?
I'm on.
Okay. So because it was just showing me that there's a connection problem. So you have all these things you have to think about. Tooling helps you a lot in a couple of manners, regardless if you're using OSGi or not. So in OSGi itself had at the beginning, the first big implementation of OSGi had been Eclipse at the time. I was around Eclipse 3, where they switched from their own modules.
Sun started with OSGi.
Yeah, Sun started the whole thing, but at a certain point, Eclipse adopted OSGi as their module system.
Exactly.
Before they had their own module system, and nowadays you still see in Eclipse RCP and Eclipse in general some remnants of this old module system, and a lot of ways they are doing things in Eclipse are not really the OSGi recommended way, so to speak.
Yeah, my joke was always, the reference implementation almost, visible Eclipse. If you load a plugin, you have to restart the entire IDE.
Exactly. So the reason for this is two things. The one thing is they use their extension point mechanism, which is a way like the service loader a bit, where you statically read when a new bundle comes around, oh yeah, this might provide an extension point, and then will do something for you. Nowadays, we have it's called declarative services. So it registers services for you, activates and deactivates them, injects all the dependencies, and only activates your service when all the dependencies are available. It's really comfortable. So it basically works as in real life, because you can only start your data, your EJB, for example, which works with a database when the data source is available. So, and this is what it's basically doing for you in a quite comfortable manner and without needing to restart anything. And Eclipse, thus there is the Eclipse PDE, the plugin development environment, which is doing all the things you require for OSGi basically manually. So you have to write your own manifest and so on and so forth. And nowadays, I would say it's not possible for a human to write a decent manifest, because there are so many things that needs considering. You can tweak it, but you need tooling to create it.
Absolutely, because the format alone, with all the list of the dependencies, you cannot write it. I mean, this is worse than Python.
Yeah, and this is what I was struggling with all these things as well, and this is why many of the most people I know that had bad experience with OSGi have this bad experience because they had been forced to use the PDE.
So, no, because for me it was not about the experience. It was overhyped, and people who didn't understood what OSGi is about forced us all, lots of projects, to use OSGi without a reason. And then we had a lot of modules, but there was no concept, and no one knew what to do with it. Should we release it at once or not?
And this is the thing. So nowadays, this is the old times. Nowadays we have the tooling to do all the analysis for you, to build the right modules and things like this. And the reason why I use a lot of modules in my project is at development time, I never have to restart my server.
Yeah. Wait a second.
So, which is a real benefit. This is something you don't rarely need in production time. But I had a project with a customer. I was building a search server for them, or a small search implementation for them. And I had basically inside my IDE, I had the runtime running for like 2 weeks straight, and had never had to restart it while I was doing my programming, my testing.
I have a suggestion. You have lots of interesting things to say, but we have almost an hour. So I will re-invite you back. And what I would like to talk with you just about modern OSGi, step by step, with declarative services and what it is and what benefits brings to you. But this is a complete different discussion. I still don't believe that OSGi would be beneficial in any of my projects because I have a microservice which is reasonable. But what I believe what can happen is, let's say Kubernetes, right? So you probably know Kubernetes. This is... I like Docker, but I don't think Kubernetes is beneficial in public clouds. In private clouds, you have no chance. You have to have something which starts and stops your servers. But in the public clouds, it does. For me, it is less appealing. But I don't know what you know. You know the gentleman called Romain Mani-Boucaud?
No.
I had a podcast with him and back to shared deployments. He is a Java guy, and he writes a server which is very similar to yours, and he combines OSGi and CDI. And his idea is to have an application server where every module is isolated with OSGi bundle, so you can hot swap the modules very easily. You know what I mean? So Kubernetes tries to do that with pods. But what you could do, you could have, an application server which works well, and every microservice is an OSGi bundle, which can be loaded and is very fast and very efficient. And this is what I can see. So I actually it was like instead of using Kubernetes, which starts and stops the stuff, I could actually in the cloud start a larger Docker container with a server and deploy multiple microservices, save resources, save money, and have better development experience. This will be a huge advantage of Java. This is interesting, but this is completely different. This is not about modularization. It's more like using, the isolation and dynamic features of OSGi for deployment. And if you like to listen to it, this is the episode 79 called Back to Shared Deployments.
Let me write it down because
and you should ping the guy because he developed something which you mentioned here, and I know him from Java E stuff, so he's really bright guy and he combines both worlds. And
it's interestingly, we actually have something like this where we can distribute our system and use remote service communication, and because when you do OSGi right, it's good. You can have it in one JVM, but at a certain point you realize, I need this part needs to be scaled, needs different hardware or something like this. You can just pull the service out, the jar or the bundle, throw it in another runtime, which is better suited, and have remote service communication. And you always, the only thing you need to do is program against your interface, as you have been doing before. And you basically wouldn't really need to change anything in your code. So, and also we also have this deployment and things like this also in there. But yeah, we definitely need to talk more about it.
Yeah, because because now it's too much information. And what I would like to, we could break down, modern OSGi, declarative services, and what we could do with that today with Java, with modern tooling. And so we have a clear view, because the old way, just enforcing modules because we would like to be modulars. I don't see this. And also there was a podcast with Erin Schnabel of Open Liberty, and she also loves OSGi declarative services. The entire Open Liberty survey is OSGi based, and they can.
I know the lead developer or one of the.
Yeah, this was really interesting server. So it was really nice to meet you, and I would like to invite you back in next year and talk about just about OSGi and about modularization. But this is I would say pragmatic modularization. Now we build server, and we can pack more Java stuff on one server with isolated modules, and we can be more efficient with the hardware and resources. So this is interesting.
I definitely love to be back. And you basically gave it the best name. This is how I see modularization as well. You need a pragmatic manner, as a pragmatic view of the whole thing, because you often have this dogmatic views, like I want it to be like this, and I don't want to use it if it's like this.
And unfortunately, all OSGi project I saw in business were dogmatic. This is my problem.
This is the biggest one. It's like Scrum. Everybody wants to do Scrum,
exactly the same. This was what I saw with OSGi was dogmatic, and there was only a few cases, and the cases were always servers. If they build a server, Payara or Open Liberty, for me it was clear that they need OSGi, because it is very clear that you will need in one point of time to have to run, two libraries with different versions at the same time or something like this. This is what server is about, right? So, nice. So, thank you, and I would say I will invite you back and have a nice chat about OSGi again.
Yeah, thanks heaps. Looking forward to it.